let's get started then.
All
So,
right.
welcome everyone to our funky little another talk night here. We've got Noxide here, a game developer. I'm gonna let him do his own introduction, but yeah. So, if you'd like to introduce yourself, feel free to get started.
Thank you very much, Rob. My real name is Matthew, Matthew Luke. Noxide's just my Discord name. But yeah, I'm mostly an animator and programmer, but my current job at HB Studios is a technical animator, which combines both those aspects. I was an indie dev for some time, mostly while I was doing another job. And yeah, eventually, after working on several projects, I decided to get into the bigger studios. Well, both for a necessity and also to expand my knowledge. Yeah, so ever since then, I've been moving from various projects and getting to know new life in Nova Scotia, which I recently moved to. So yeah, that's pretty much a quick summary of me.
Sorry, I forgot where my mute button was on my my headphones there.
No worries. I feel like muting myself all the time.
Yeah, just to make sure that I'm not speaking. Yeah, that's great to hear, man. And you had that game you're working on. I'll post the um, link to that, and for anyone watching from YouTube or wherever you're watching from, I will have the link in whatever description we have. So
Sounds good.
if you want to take a look
Yeah.
at that, yeah, you can go on and explain that if you'd like.
Yeah, that game is called Sling Dash. It's something I've been working on for a couple years. It was originally supposed to launch last year, but this project is something I do off time when I'm not working, along with another friend who's also has his own full-time job. And honestly, we just kind of delayed it for like a year or so, which wasn't the most ideal situation. But these things happen, and it wasn't the biggest priority for either of us. It's more or less just a great way to keep our keep at it, as they say. So, but I'm still very proud of this game, and I hope to release it soon.
Yeah, that's great to hear, man. I think it's I took a look at it and I think it's really cool as well, especially because I've had a couple of people ask me about like mobile games that are kind of more chill. They don't have like a cajillion ads in them, because like
I know. I
those
really
games.
want, yeah, I really
Yeah,
wanted to make something that was, well, I think puzzle games are kind of underappreciated, and especially in the mobile section. And I kind of enjoyed the idea of using a slingshot in a phone game because one of the mechanics I really like that I don't see is used often is the dragging back and using it to aim or shoot something. And yeah, I felt that could work really well with something like this, which essentially is about getting a character to the end goal, but you're not really able to control its movements any more than where he goes first and making him jump throughout the level. So kind of like endless runner where you not really not, that's not an endless runner, but like a runner where you choose where you want to go and then jump where you need to go. Something like that.
yeah, I think that's really cool, and I do think that people need a kind of game where they can use their brain. They don't have to use their brain for watching advertisements and looking for where the X button are in them all the time. Especially with nowadays, with the whole industry kind of being more, what's the word for it? Like monetized, I guess, where like everything
Yeah.
is paid for. You have to pay for everything in some way. Of course, like small things to help the developers, that's okay. But when you get
There's
to
a
like,
reason for that after all. I mean, because everything is practically free, you have serious competition when everyone's putting a game out. So monetizing it in any way possible is usually the preferred method in the mobile industry. That's what they'll tell you. And there is a sound reasoning to that. But I do enjoy the idea of giving players a little more, I guess, yeah, more options in terms of how they can spend their time and money, and hopefully just a better experience as a result.
yeah, it's interesting. How has your experience been so far with developing a mobile game? Has there been any setbacks, challenges that differ from building a game, let's say on a PC or on a console or something? And how do you overcome
Um, I guess the biggest difference, well, came from when I was talking with a publisher about this. Because when I first showed this to a publisher, they were they found that the gameplay was really nice and they enjoyed it, but they also saw they didn't see it had a lot of personality at first. And this was back when I was using like a very like it's a simplified style now, but it was even more simple beforehand. And they knew that this game was was a tad bit more complicated than the usual hyper casual games in the market. And hyper casual games, for those who don't know, are extremely simplified games, which is usually just a simple mechanic done really well. It's mainly it's not going to have a lot of RPG elements or anything like that. It's going to be something you can pick up and understand within like a few seconds. So in order to make this work, they told me that I should probably give it a little more identity so people can actually understand a little more what's going on, especially when there's a lot more mechanics going on. I still wanted to keep it as simple as possible, but those are just some of the hurdles you have to deal with. And the mobile market is it's actually pretty varied. Like I said, there was hyper casual, but there's also like the extreme like the typical market you'd or mostly see in terms of like the massive RPGs that you see or even the gambling games. But yeah, there's a bit of variety there, and I haven't explored all of it. Probably not going to, but hey, that's just it.
Yes, it's all about exploration at some point. Um, that's cool to hear. Yeah, I think your game's really interesting. For anyone who just joined us, if you go into the chat, we have a link to the a video of Sling Dash and what it looks like. Um, I think it's really, really cool to be honest. I would definitely see myself playing this. Like the way I see it, at least, is like, would I play this on a bus, on a 2-hour bus to Toronto or something like that? If yes, then I think I've done well for myself.
Sounds like a good sale to me. I like it.
Yes. So, moving on from that, I wanted to ask about your experience in the industry. How is being a game developer in a corporation differing from an indie game developer? And how did you feel when like,
Hmm.
how hard was it to break into that industry when you graduated? You can answer those questions separately if you'd like.
Yeah. So let me think this through. When I started out, like just finishing college, one of my first goals was to find a job like in one of the bigger studios. I figured that would be the most reliable way to justify my or decisions of doing this because I always thought that was guaranteed. Like if I was able to get there, I'd be set for a little bit at least. And for a while, that is what it was. I didn't necessarily get into a game design studio. I actually worked at a place called Arc Productions in Toronto when I got out of college, and that was more of an animation studio. But yeah, for the first year, I was working on the Thomas the Tank Engine series, just animating the trains and all that stuff. And it was fine, but after the studio shut down, and or a lot of people were left out of work, that's when I had to start thinking more indie-like. So I had to start I had to get back into the mindset of what you have to do when building your own projects and also making yourself more useful, wearing a lot of hats. And when you are working on your own project, being an indie, you have to have a visionary mindset. Um, what I mean by that is you have to understand the scope of your project and see it through to the end. And seeing it through to the end is one of the hardest parts. A lot of people they can see themselves working on like a puzzle game or an action adventure game or an RPG, something like that. But they don't really like it's very hard to see it through to the end, understand what you need to do to complete it, and holding on to that energy all the way through that could last maybe several years. That's a very hard thing to acquire at first, and I would recommend to any indie devs that they should start off on smaller projects first. Like try and complete games, obviously, but start working on smaller games and then slowly build yourself up, getting bigger and bigger as time goes forward. And it all accumulates your experience, which will make you more desirable to work with, either with other fellow indies or even being picked up in the industry, which is what I eventually did do. Because after a couple years of working in the indie, um, I eventually got into a place called HD Multisport, which was a simple it was a simple animation position as well as digital imaging, working on golf games, and that led me to HB Studios a couple of years later when um, when I sought out new work over there. Eventually moved to Nova Scotia and stuff like that. I'm rambling a bit here, but I hope that kind of explains the differences. When you're an indie, you have to have scope and you have to commit to a project, try and get it done. When you're working in the industry, you're more or less going to be part of like a bigger team. Most likely won't be the director, but or anything like that, but you will be playing important roles. They're both equally valid, and I think they're great. They're good jobs regardless.
There we go. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I think that everything you said is interesting there. I think the whole thing of wearing different hats is something that's often talked about with people, especially people in the indie industry. You gotta wear multiple hats. Was there any challenges in that field for you? Like when you,
Lenti, yeah.
yeah, when you started your game, let's say, with your friend, um, was how hard was it to wear all those different hats and to kind of,
Yeah,
yeah,
so to get back into Sling Dash, when I started this, I wanted to create the basic structure of the game first, before even introducing this concept to my friend. Basically, I made the overall design of how the game would play. I'd show it to my friend and ask if he wanted to be part of this, and when he agreed, it's like, okay, good, we'll start dividing up the work and figuring out what we need to do here. Um, so we play to each other's strengths. I'm not great with texturing. I am good with animation though, and even though I have learned a lot of programming, I'm not exactly an expert at the subject. But my friend was, and so we tried to work with each other on that, try and getting this game to really shine, as they say. So a lot of the textures you see in the game are from Andrew, my partner. A lot of the models and animations are mine, and we kind of, well, actually, I'd say most of the programming is still mine because eventually we realized that programming over each other was a bit, I mean, it, we got a lot to learn on that aspect. It's probably something that shouldn't shy away from, but for this project, like, at least we didn't want to step over each other's toes. So, but he did show me quite a few interesting things that I never considered before. And while I would have liked to have taken those advanced programming techniques into this game, I realized that it's better to try that again with a new project from the ground up rather than trying to retroactively change a lot of the code. Anyways, that's those were some of the challenges I found when working as an indie. Mostly that I was trying to divide up our strengths, and yeah, sometimes it works out well. Sometimes we're waiting a long time for the other to finish each other's work, but that's it's just one of the things that happens.
yeah, and yes, we've already had quite a couple of questions, which is kind of nice. We'll ask them at the end again. But yeah, that's really interesting. And how, for you at least, how did becoming an indie developer kind of uh, like did it change your view on the industry at all? I mean, I know that you started out in a corporation, so obviously, you must have had like a view on the industry based on
Mm,
that job that you had originally. But now that you're not at a corporation, you're creating your own game. You're exposed to a lot more of the indie developer side. Would you
mm.
prefer to go the indie developer route? Like, if you just graduated, would you think that you should just go down the indie developer route or corporation,
Mm.
or is there like a mix of the
For
two?
Perhaps I should probably clarify a bit. I still do work at HB Studios, but I also work on indie games on my spare time. Um, I should probably clarify that. I have done both full time on each one, but anyways, to get back to what you were saying is, when I was very young, my goal was to work at Nintendo. That was like the kid's dream, and it still is my dream. But that was kind of the mindset I had, that if I want to get to work at a big company like Nintendo, I need to focus on trying to get into other companies and work my way up into higher positions. That was the mindset. But I did recognize indie work even back then, and the idea of having a little more control in what you're working on, making your own games and working on a smaller team, by doing so, it's not just even your own games, working with working on other people's games in a smaller team. Those are all great mindsets to have. And I did see that there were challenges to it as well, figuring out like, say for example, when I was working on another game, it was a STEM learning game for kids. I was more or less contracted to work on it, and those types of game or those types of projects, you're more or less doing something as similar to what you were doing in a bigger industry studio, but you'll be just taking on a lot more roles as well. So let me just think this through.
It's okay, take your time,
I,
man.
gu- I guess what I'm saying is that indie work and studio work, they're not exactly all that different. It's just you're going to you should expect that you are going to be taking on a lot problem solving tasks, and that's really what anyone wants from you. If you're going to be like a good worker, you got to figure out how to get something done. And when you're working as an indie, you'll probably have a lot more responsibilities to figuring that out than you would in a studio. But nonetheless, problem solving skills are the most essential things.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's. I'll ask a question here because I'm sure there's quite a couple of people interested in the animation and art side as well. Because we talked a lot about programming as well last week and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's fair if I ask you a quick question about that. How is as an animator breaking into that industry? Because as a programmer, it is quite difficult, and the way you usually go about it is you do a contest or you do something like that, and it kind of people see your work out there, and that's kind of how they recognize you. They're like, "Hey, this guy did this work." Instead of putting out this big for work page, like a hiring page, I can just go to this guy, get this guy, girl, whoever they are, give them an interview. If I like them, I'll just hire them, and I don't have to put out any sort of like for hire page. How does it work for an animator?
Yeah, animators and most artists in general, they usually have to go with their portfolio. Like you gotta work on your own time, building on some projects. I would totally recommend whatever type of bad habit you have that you feel is a time sink, immediately substitute that for your animation or your programming or whatever. Just build some stuff on your own time, create or portfolio, and start advertising yourself out to whoever you need to advertise to. If you are really good, you can probably gear your animation work specifically to the person you're trying to get hired by or work with. That's the best advice I can give. It's what I've tried to do when I was getting hired for HB Studios. It was a bit easier for me because HB Studios focuses on sports games, and the last studio I worked with was also focusing on sports games. Made things a bit easier for me. But yeah, gearing yourself to the place you want to work is always the right choice, and building a portfolio really helps, especially for an animator.
Yeah, and I think I've talked to a lot of art students about that kind of stuff, and portfolio is one of the largest things I think I've heard out of everyone. So it's interesting to hear that. How do you? So I'm just gonna. Oh, whoopsies. There we go. Um, so I had a question about the project you're working on, and also I guess it kind of involves your like your what do you call it again? Um, the company you work for. How do you deal with burnout, and how do you keep motivation while working on a
Hmm.
project, whether it be in the industry, like for a corporation, or on your own project specifically?
So I think well, if you recall what I said before about having a vision of what you're going to do, being a visionary, that plays a big role in whether or not you're going to have burnout, at least for me. Because a lot of the times when I experience burnout, it's really just me not really knowing what I need to do next or having issues figuring out. Like I may know I need to do this work in UI, but I'm not really that passionate about UI. I never learned too much about UI, and therefore, I'm not really motivated to learning about UI, and therefore, that's the problem. I'm using UI as an example, by the way, but what I'm getting at here is that that's probably the biggest issue of why people can feel demotivated or just not want to continue is because they're probably going to work on something they just don't like or just find too tedious. And the best answer I can give to that is you're gonna just have to you're probably gonna want to try and do that work along with something you do like, or at the very least push through. Because yeah, that those are the yeah, it's just something you're just gonna have to you're just gonna have to bite the bullet sometimes, especially when you know you're being depended on by someone else. Like I found getting through burnout is a lot easier when I know there's someone waiting on the lines for me to get it done, especially when I have some sort of deadline. That's uh, that's one way to look at it, I suppose.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I kind of just I kind of just stalked your LinkedIn page real quick. Um, but I had a question actually about specifically your after you graduated. Um, was there any sort of internships you got right off the bat, or was there a competition you did to get an internship? What was the process of finding your first job after you graduated from George Brown in Toronto?
So there was some or internship I did actually during my final years at George Brown and shortly after. I was working at Winchester Games. Started doing some simple tasks like creating like little graphical images, and then slowly pushing going forward and doing small animations to work on the game called Grid Legion. I'm sure some of the people in the audience might know what I'm talking about. I was working under Fernando, and he's a really great guy, taught me a lot. But for the most part, I sought out that internship. One of the teachers was talking about things we can do post while we're still learning, extra activities, and I immediately leaped onto anything I could because I saw, I recognized that working after school was going to be a challenge, and I wanted to get any type of edge I could have over the competition. Sorry to or say it like that, but that's kind of how I felt at the time. That everyone around me was really good, and I had to also be good. That's was my mindset. So
Interesting, yeah. Like getting trying to get the edge over people and basically
friendly
cuz
competition, yeah.
yeah, something that was said last week by Tam or Harm Done. He said that one of the biggest things is when you get out of college, you and your other classmates are all going to have the same portfolio because you've all done the same projects. So like the best way to differ from that is obviously to create your own off school time projects or even as an internship during school time even. I know
Exactly.
I'm sure Fernando had a great you had a great experience with him and just he's a great guy. I've like talked to him quite a bit. Great guy. It seems like he's very passionate, which is something that's really important, I feel like. Would you
Mhm.
so with your game that you started, have you ever thought of from taking, would you want to keep this as in just a simple indie game with you two guys, or would you want to create your own company off of this and maybe in the future create more games like this?
Hmm. There is always that idea that I could take this as a stepping stone to something bigger, and that's kind of what I want to do, but it all really depends on where I want to go. Starting my own company sounds very appealing, but I also have to deal with a lot of things I don't know yet, which, and for some people, that's just another challenge they have to overcome, and I'm totally okay with that concept. I am thinking to myself, though, that what I'm using this project for is to I guess it would be to prepare myself for an even bigger project. Because even now, this game, which started small, just got bigger and bigger, and that was my fault. I didn't keep the scope down. And that's something I got to work on. But really, building my own company, that's that is a full-time job, and that means you have to really commit. If I if I was a full-time indie and I was really good at it, then that's the natural process. That's the natural next step to go with. Right now, I'm sort of in a hybrid mode where I'm working full-time, but also working on an indie project. And I'm kind of okay with that system right now, at least for the time being. So I don't see this game, you know, turning my career into a studio lead, but I do see it as a stepping stone to work on bigger projects, building bigger teams, and hopefully getting noticed by more people.
Yeah, and that's amazing, honestly. Yeah. I think we kind of answered this question a little bit, but if you have anything to add to it, feel free.
Sure.
What made you choose HB Studios as like your current job? Was there any competition before? Like you don't have to answer that part, but like was there
Hmm.
any sort of defining factor that got you to go with this company?
Well, before HB Studios, I was working at HD Multisports for some time. And HB Multisports, they were a good company. However, I knew after a year or two that I was working at a place where I couldn't see myself advancing any further within the studio. Um, and also the pay wasn't as great as other places, which is also another factor. But I suppose after thinking about it, I've seen how some of my other coworkers who've been there longer than me are kind of like content with what they were doing, and I thought to myself like this was a really hard thing. Was like this job is pretty easy. I can do it, and I could probably live off what I'm working on and all that stuff. But do is that really going to be enough for me? Like in terms of being satisfied in the future. And I thought to myself, now is a good time to actually start looking for other places and going even further. And that's what led me from becoming a regular animator slash digital imager to a technical animator over at HB Studios. It was about several months of nonstop or of nonstop job searching, rebuilding my portfolio, figuring out the right things to say in like dozens of interviews, just constantly looking over what I said and everything like that. And also, yeah, just I guess just exploring new avenues because I would always go into like a studio that's looking for work and saying they're looking for animators, junior animators, all that stuff. And I would normally never go higher than intermediate animator. But eventually I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it. I'll just say I'm going to apply as a senior animator. And then eventually I said I'm going to apply as a programmer, technical animator, all that stuff. Things that I think that I thought to myself saying, yeah, I could probably do that because, well, I'm capable of doing that, even if I don't know it yet. And it is what led me to work at it or as a technical animator, even though I never actually had the role of technical animator before that. It's just a matter of the confidence that you can do it and that you will do it. That's probably the best way I can say it.
Interesting. Okay, okay. That's cool. Yeah. Um yes. So I think one of the largest and this is gonna kind of I'm gonna just let's just forget about let's say like you've already graduated. This is after you've quit or you got yeah you quit from HD Studios, right? That's what it was called. I'm not wrong.
HD, yeah,
HD
HD
Studios. Let's say you
multisport.
quit there. You're looking for a job now. What was the first thing you did to make yourself stand out for the rest of the animators? Was it kind of
Hmm.
making your portfolio geared towards a technical animator a lot more? Was there a specific piece of your portfolio that you had that you felt like you needed fixing, or was there just something you said in the interview that I think a lot of people might have liked?
Um, I think really what really separated me, and this is just my assumption because I never really asked them that after I was hired. But my assumption was that what really separated me from the rest was how applicable I was. A lot of people showed a lot of people were off put about the idea of working of like moving to a new province and working at a new place like so far from Ontario just to get a job and all that stuff, and I was totally willing to do that. um it was also that I was willing to relearn completely new things. They asked me if I knew anything in Python for Motion Builder, and I honestly answered that I did not know, but I'm totally willing to learn because I do know Python and a few other things. And yeah, so they expected me to learn a lot when starting this new job. And so for the probation period, they really tested me of what I could do, and luckily I did not disappoint. So does that answer the question? I
Yeah,
think I felt like I okay, yeah, good.
yeah, you're good. Don't worry. And by the way, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I will read them through in a little bit, and we can talk about those as well. I've got some questions already, but if you guys have some, just feel free to put them in the chat. Yeah, that's interesting. I think that being applicable everywhere is pretty important, to be honest. So I'm gonna kind of take your point here, and I'm gonna kind of what's the word for it? Like subsidize it? I don't know. There's like a word for it. But here, I'm gonna try to say your point and abbreviate your point a little more. So
Sure.
one of the just tell me if I'm wrong here. So one of the most important things that you did wasn't trying to be good at everything at once. It was being good at like one thing or like whatever an animator was supposed to do, but being available to learn anything and being willing to do anything basically.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it because for most people, it's impossible to know everything there is, even in your area of expertise. But it is good to be ready to know what to do and to do it well.
Yeah, I think Tam said it perfectly. Showing a willingness to learn is very key.
Hmm.
And yeah, you never stop being a student of game development or anything like that. I think that's a key point as well. Just
Sorry,
very
say
key.
that again.
We're all, he said, we're all students of game development still. We never stop being a student or we never stop learning, which I
Hmm,
think is,
that's an interesting thing to say. I mean, I do agree that there's always much to learn, but I would say that there is something to be said about applying yourself in a way that you don't constantly need to be told what to do. Because, say, for example, when I was at HB Studios, when they're asking me to solve an issue, th- they're mostly depending on me just to figure out what I need or what can I do to get this problem fixed, and whether that's building a tool or fixing something that's already there, or just finding a workaround that doesn't cause any of the other animators additional stress or complicate their or pipeline process. But I do agree that you do constantly need to learn. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is you gotta if you gotta hmm, sorry, I'm losing my
no,
words right
no, it's
here.
okay. Take your time, man. It's all good. I
But
think.
yeah, I'd say the student mindset is an important thing to have, but you also have to have the worker's mindset of just being ready for anything and yeah, knowing when to yeah, knowing when to get it done.
I think something really, really important that my dad always used to tell me was that uh, you can be open and willing to learn anything you want, but if you don't have a set of skills or you don't have an idea of where you want to go and like you know quite a bit in that industry to actually be of use to a company, then it doesn't really help at all. You can say you're willing to
Actually,
work, you're open to do everything, but
yeah, actually this is might be a good way to explain it. So, what's the difference between a student and an experienced worker?
oh,
The idea of
interesting.
the idea of a student like they will ask questions, they will learn, and they're typically like they're ready to learn, but they usually need a guide or something like that to help them learn. A worker is sort of like a worker should have the ability to figure out what to do next on their own.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So, a worker doing something, basically they're working on their own. They've got their own like you're
I
given a
wouldn't say
task,
they
they
don't.
can do it.
I wouldn't say they don't have. I wouldn't say they have to work on their own all the time, but they should have the ability to know what to do next in a sense. Like they shouldn't have to wait for the next direction from their boss every single time. Sometimes it's good to do that, but other times they should be able to handle whatever task they need to do on their own. That's what a lot of people are looking for when you want to become like a leader in a sense. They should be able to figure these things out eventually and not need to ask for help too much. Don't get me wrong. When you're beginning, don't be afraid to ask questions and ask for help, but eventually when you want to become reliable, you should be able to handle these things on your own and yeah, and eventually you'll be the ones helping other people who will just start learning or who are just starting out, if that makes sense.
Sorry, my mic is muted. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So do you mind if I just a quick question? Do you mind if I throw your LinkedIn in one of the channels for people to see? That's
By
okay.
all means.
Alrighty, I'm gonna throw it in the Talk Night Q&A, just for everyone to see. I'm hoping that's right. You can tell me if that's wrong, but I'm almost 100% sure that is you. um, yes. Okay. So we've got quite a lot of questions that some people have had. So if that's okay with you, we're gonna get to the little Q&A part we're gonna have.
Let's do it.
All right. So first questions, we have three questions from Loft. He's asking. I'll ask you the first question. How do you, if you plan on making money for your game? Considering mobile games, especially free ones, rely heavily on paid content, especially stuff like energy systems, for a way of making money. How will you integrate that in your game? If you're not doing so, is there a reason why?
So that's actually something I kept pretty vague about my game. I didn't implement any type of payment system yet or advertisement system. What I plan to do is have this game essentially nearly completed for when I bring it to the publisher. And keep in mind, you don't necessarily need to have your game finished before you show it to a publisher. I already showed it to a publisher. That's why I've gotten it this far before. But once we're at the point where the publisher is on board, wants to pick it up and everything, they're probably going to give me well, because they're going to be funding a lot of the marketing and pushing it to hundreds of thousands of eyeballs. They're most likely going to have requests for me to implement some sort of payment system or advertisement system, and I believe we'll probably have a few back and forths on that of what I find acceptable and what they find mandatory and stuff like that.
Yes.
But yeah, I right now the payment system will be on my mind once I get this on board with the publisher.
Yeah, for sure. And yes, energy systems, my least favorite system of almost all time. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's not great. It's great for the developers. It's not great for me, the player.
Hmm. Well, from what I play with the hyper casual games, I don't see too many of those energy systems in there. It's mostly just advertisements. So, at the very least, I'm okay with those things, which is
Yeah,
kind of why, yeah.
as long as they're not popping up after every single level and after I die every single time, I don't mind.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So another question he had was, what are some other games that inspired you to make a mobile game?
Now, when it came to a mobile game, it isn't like how I think of more grand scale games. Like for those things, I usually have a story in mind or uh, a reference in mind of some type of game beforehand or something I really want to do. When it came to these smaller games, I think of a mechanic first. And this actually started off as a bowling game, this Sling Dash phone game. It originally started out as a game jam project that I really liked. I tinkered it with it a bit. Decided instead of playing it on the PC with a point and click type thing for the bowling ball, I would turn that into a slingshot system and just fling the ball at the pins. And eventually, I decided it's like, okay, just a bowling game isn't really going to be enough. I decided to turn that into a target game, and as it evolved, that from that point forward, I just it turned into what it is today. So really, it started with a basic mechanic at a game jam, and that's how we got Sling Dash.
God, I'm so good at forgetting where my mute button is on my keyboard. Oh my god. Yes. Um. Okay, interesting. Yeah. So Tam just said the best ad system is one that, in his opinion, is one that helps the player profit by choice. For example, an instant revive slash retry at the same spot, or they have to restart a whole level.
Hmm. Interesting.
I think
Not
just
sure if instant revive will work on this game, but I do like that. I do like the concept.
Yeah, or even like a button that gets rid of all the ads, that kind of stuff. Like as long as the ads aren't like ruining the gameplay, you're fine, I think. I don't know. I'm not exactly the greatest when it comes to that, but as a player, as long as I'm not getting bombarded with ads, and I have looked at it when I used to do mobile development on Unity, I always had to think of the ad part of it and how that would look for my game. But I never made it that far
Hmm.
anyways, so that's okay.
I
um,
just,
yeah.
y-
So yeah.
I'm just thinking of an idea for an ad transition right now. Like in my game, whenever you fail, there's a transition to reset the level with that little green screen wipe. You can easily just have a 3 second ad within that or a green screen transition.
Yeah.
But no, no,
Have a little like Walmart ad or something like that. Hey, you
just
want
it doesn't even have to be 3 seconds. It could be 1 second. You just see a flash, get Pepsi or something like that.
Yeah. Hey, you want Pepsi? There you go. Yes, if only 3-second ads existed. If only we could get that. That'd be great.
They'd be called flash ads. But
Flash
yeah.
ads. That would get a lot of people's attention. People's attention spans have subsidized over the years. So, yeah,
Mm,
three
mm.
seconds is probably the like perfect length for people. Especially after a hard puzzle game. I'm sure everyone's brains will be kind of fried afterwards, and they're like, I don't want to see another ad.
I guess so. But
Yeah.
okay, so the final question that was it Loaf had was how do you complete the other games in mobile genre you're aiming for? How do you compete with the other games in the mobile genre you're aiming for? Do you have any strategies? Okay, so I wasn't thinking about competing with any other games when making this one. I was mostly figuring out what is going to be a fun game to play on the phone. And I wasn't even thinking about the hyper casual market until I started showing it off to people who are experienced in this industry. And they said, hey, I think this game would really work for the hyper casual market. They showed me some examples. I was like, oh, okay, okay. I could try and model my game to be a little more like this because it seemed like that the game I was working on would eventually drift more into that area. So yeah, I'm not thinking too much about competing with other games in the mobile market. I'm gonna leave that to marketing. Sorry, I'm not a huge strategist when it comes to this stuff.
Let's let the business majors do what they're best at.
Yeah.
please. You let people who are specialized in that field deal with that. They'll do a lot more for you than if you tried to, right?
Yep. That's how it works.
I certainly don't want to touch business. I've seen people that like, you have the convincing you have to do to people, and it's like, oh, I
Mm.
couldn't. If I had to try to like, it's not really sucking up to someone. It's like if I had to try to sit there and like convince someone to get this, I would probably go crazy.
Yeah, I worked in sales for a little bit, and I didn't really, well, I mean, for a while I liked it, but I knew the products I was selling to them, like, I didn't like the idea of selling something that even I wasn't really supportive about for a while. But in regards to this, like, I kind of danced around the subject anyways about me starting my own business. It is something that I might want to do in the future, but yeah, you'd have to learn a lot, and right now, when you already have to learn so much just to be an indie dev, it does help to divide up the work and let people who are good at what they do it. And right now, a publisher should at least have that if you're gonna find a publisher.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And I think Nick just said he wanted to add that as game developers, and he really despises ad spam. We should be mindful that we do need to make money to sustain our studios, so we should not make ads our absolute enemies.
True, true, very true. See, I know like we live in a world where we get a lot of things for free, and in advertisements, I mean, advertisements are sort of like the repercussions of a free world. I mean, there was a time when people complained about TV ads. No one does that anymore.
Oh my god,
So,
I bet I don't even watch this TV anymore. Oh my god, the
indeed.
advertisements you'd get when you're watching like Cartoon Network or Teletoon or something, and you're like, oh my god, I don't want to see Pepsi or Coke for the 14th time. But nowadays,
Yeah,
you're like,
well,
I
you know,
miss
that
that.
paid for your show, so that's how
Yeah,
it works.
that's how it works. And also, they're a lot shorter than all the YouTube ads nowadays with the 20-second ones and 2 and 3 and 4
Indeed.
ones. So yeah, but again, it all pays for everything. So I think that's something that people don't really keep in mind a lot of the time.
Yeah, we just gotta work with what we got in the industry. The ecosystem of our game development industry, I should say.
hmm So yeah, sorry Nick, I've been dancing around your questions quite a bit. I saw the length of them and I was like, okay, here we go. Um,
Okay.
so we've got a couple of questions. I don't know if you want to read them first, or I don't mind reading them to you if you'd like. If that's easier.
Sure. I guess let's see. Showing willingness is key. Okay, that's comment. Okay. If you were to foray into PC games and take into account the experience you've gathered with Sling Dash, what sort of game would you aim for as your first PC game? I got an idea for an RPG I want to work on next, and it is something I've had in mind before Sling Dash. But luckily, I had enough experience at that point to realize that I need to start smaller because making a complete game is tricky, and I'm not just talking about making a game with like a starting, middle, and end. You also have to think about actually shipping the game and going through that whole process as well, figuring out what exactly a game needs, like post game design. And I'm talking about things like what am I going to have to add to make this viable, like in the market and all that stuff. So, yeah, I do have an idea of what I want to do there. But yeah, it's just gonna. I'm patient enough to wait for it. And second question: what size the team you need to complete said game? Probably if it could be depending on how I want to approach this. Right now, like I said, I am working as a technical animator full time, so I'm doing pretty much all this part time. If I wanted to continue that route, I could probably do it with a small team, even by myself, and then just hire people for sound and uh, various other aspects when I need to, and it would just take a very long time to complete. If I wanted to just commit a serious amount of time on this, which is getting increasingly hard nowadays, I could get a bigger team and try and get a bigger game done within a year or two. But yeah, that's a choice you got to make yourself based on where you're at this stage of your life. How much, how long, how do you estimate the budget, timeline, and completion would be? God, I wish I was good at that question. If I had an answer for that, I would have had Sling Dash finished a year ago. So that's my answer there. Of
Yes.
course, that's a lot of yeah.
Yes, that's interesting. Yeah. Is there an engine that you've thought of for your RPG game, or is it kind of undecided
Instant.
still?
Funny enough, this last few weeks I've been starting to learn a lot of Godot.
Oh,
And
really?
this isn't just because of the whole Unity debacle that happened a month back. Godot was something I was interested in with a long time ago because I just enjoyed how clean it looked. The node-based system that they're going with, like my coding is kind of it's not that great. I do a lot of spaghetti coding, and
Oh no.
because the options are available there in Unity, I tend to always go with the easiest option, the quickest way to figure out how to get something done, and cleaning it up afterwards is a huge pain. So my goal was with Godot, I wanted to learn all the proper ways to build a game or from the beginning so I don't get into a bad habit like I did in Unity. So, yeah, it is that's my answer right there, and hopefully I will commit to it because once I start getting good with Godot, I'm gonna start building just some mock-ups of my RPG in the future. So,
Interesting. Yeah. Uh, yes, budgets and timelines are never perfect and always change. Yes, that's very important. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I can take what you said right there. Sorry, I'm just rolling everything through my brain, letting it kind of go through it here. But the way I manage things was always because like I do a lot of back-end development, so working with the memory, working with the photos you see, the like BMP files, yeah, every little pixel, changing the filters of them and that kind of stuff. It's kind of fun, little fun little things. I always like to chunk up my work and optimize that after I'm done that chunk of work because that makes it a lot easier to kind of get rid of that whole spaghetti code situation. You take it at chunks at a time. It even goes with game development, to be honest. You take your game at chunks at a time, different blocks you take, um, and slowly over time, as soon as you're done one, you want to optimize it. And I guess it's quite hard to optimize it. There's a difference with the way I'm doing things. It's it's like everything changes as
yeah,
soon as you add another function in, so it's very complicated sometimes, but you try to
I found
optimize it
that
when you can.
was yeah. Yeah, I found that was a big issue with working on Sling Dash, especially when I started adding more mechanics into it. Like originally, I worked on the player first and then the environment. But as I started adding more mechanics, I realized I had added more. Uh, I had to make the player adjust for these things, and going back to the player script and figuring out how to make it work with new mechanics I added, it just got messier and messier as the project got bigger and bigger. So, yeah, even though I managed to get everything to work, the bigger the project gets, the more complicated it all ends up. And thank God it's just me and my friend. And this is why we decided not to step over each other in programming too much because reading each other's code was not fun for any of us.
I'm sure,
But
yeah.
yeah, so that's why I want to improve my programming with this new engine, and I'm going to try and get out of some bad habits. So it's also one of the reasons why I'm glad I started on a smaller project first, because had I tried this immediately with a big project, I would have got lost halfway through because God knows how many times I'd have to go back and fix something, then go back again 2 or months later when I add something new to it. So yeah, hopefully with yeah, anyways, I'm repeating myself at this point, but yeah.
No, it's okay, man. Yeah, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Um, yeah. I honestly, that's almost all the questions I had for today. Everything that I had to ask, you kind of answered for me in the forms of all the other questions we asked as well. It's always really hard sometimes with these nights, or sorry, I guess afternoons. It's always hard with these sometimes because when I ask a question, usually two of the other questions are also answered in that same one, and it's quite hard to kind of find new questions to
Hmm.
ask. But having a community that kind of has more ideas, that's why I like having these in the servers because I'm sure a lot of people have little questions here and there, especially because our server is full of programmers and animators and art people and all that kind of stuff. Like I don't know, people that want to be technical artists, that kind of stuff, which I think is really cool and it's really needed in the industry nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any last thoughts? Anything you want to say to anyone just graduating from? Because we've got quite a couple people
Hmm.
from an art program, that kind of stuff. Anything else?
Well, something I would recommend to even artists and not just programmers is to try and build a small game. Doesn't If you're an artist and don't have any programming experience, there are tutorials around that will show you how to quickly build a game with very little knowledge in that subject, just so you can get your art assets in a game and start showing off what you can do as a game dev or developer, but on the animation side or on the graphics side or the modeling side. Do stuff like that. Show proof of concepts is what I'm saying. That always helps. It Because I know a lot of people these days, they're not just looking for uh, the proof that you have knowledge, they're also looking for experience and showing that you can apply this into whatever they need it to be, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, anyone have any final questions, any thoughts on this matter before we wrap it up for today? If that's okay with you, Knox. I don't know if you have anything else you
Yeah,
want to
go
say.
right ahead.
All right. I don't see any other questions, so I'm gonna assume you guys are good. If you have anything else you want to ask, maybe later on, if you think of something, send me a DM or Knox, I guess as well, if you're okay with it.
I'm okay with it.
Uh, yeah, I'm sure we'll get back to it at some point. If you have any questions, anything like that, yeah, thank you guys for coming out today. Thank you, Knox, for showing up today and talking with us. I think it was very valuable information and everyone everyone needs to hear. I feel like one of the most important things with students nowadays, especially like with me, is talking to people in the industry like you, who's both done corporation work and indie work, and just kind of figuring that stuff out there. I
Hmm.
think it's really important to see that kind of stuff. Yeah, thank you.
I'm glad I helped out somewhat. So, you guys take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing what you guys can do. Now that I'm on this channel, I'll be sure to check out from time to time what's been going on.
Yeah, and check out any of our events. We've got lots of them. I always try to make events that cater towards everyone. I think it's one of our important things that we always try to do here. Um, yeah, make sure to take a look at Nox's game when I'm sure whenever it releases, you'll if you send me the link, I can put an announcement out. Just like I said before, we've got a couple games that I'm excited to share when they come out. So I'll add yours to the list. We can send it out and
Lovely.
have a little launch party for that. That'd be sick. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thank you, Nox. Um,
Much appreciated. You guys take care.
yeah. Take care, everyone. And thank you.
Bye.